As long as you have a Muslim population, you will have a part of the population that is devoutly religious. Unfortunately, traditionally, Islam is a very subversive, a very hostile, a very aggressive, a hateful, a very backward religion. So if you have a population, even if it's just 10%, you have a problem.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Western Spirit. Today we have with us someone very special, Ridvan Aydemir. He's a YouTuber, ex-writer. He's the Apostate Prophet, whoever wants to go to YouTube, but I assume you guys already know that. Ridvan is a former Muslim. Now he's a Christian, and we'll get into that a little bit, but he's someone who I consider very brave, someone who left a religion that doesn't like people who leave the religion, to put it mildly. And he's someone who I think knows how to express and explain to people who aren't from that world what we're up against, what's happening there, what does the Islamic world think of world events in the West, and how we should relate to that. So Ridvan, without further ado, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me and for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
So Ridvan, you are in Israel. We're both sitting here in Tel Aviv. And one of the things that I thought of talking to you about, and we were speaking about before we got on camera, is on October 7th, one of the amazing things is that the terrorists who butchered, massacred, did all the worst, horrible things, filmed themselves, and that we all know. But the thing that stood out for me was that they filled themselves in a way of ecstasy.
Yeah.
They were happy. They were cheering. They were almost on drugs without being on drugs. They were high on the killing, on the torture, on the maiming, on this. The worst things that someone in the West can even think about were for them the best things. Mm-hmm. And the only way we can understand this is that it's a different way of thinking than we in the West are used to. It's not the same value system. It's not the same cultural system. So can you maybe explain to people in the West that don't understand how this can be? Why do they get to that point?
Yes, so it's going to be very dark from here on, but the thing is that on October 7, the terrorist attack that occurred, which was led by Hamas, but was not exclusive to Hamas.
Right.
So what many people often leave out is that it was Hamas. Hamas made it together with their closest ally in the Gaza Strip, which is the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist organization. That you could argue is even worse than Hamas, but it's however smaller. Then you also had minor organizations like certain organizations affiliated or that abandoned the PLO for a more extreme size. Yeah, ISIS was there. You had the PFLP, the DFLP, so leftist organizations, socialist, communist organizations, minor ones. But also aside from those, aside from the militant organizations, you also had regular Gazan civilians join in and infiltrate the borders of Israel, and together they committed all kinds of massacres. We have, among the videos that were filmed on that day from the so-called Palestinians, we don't only have GoPro footage from Hamas members, we also have videos taken by regular Gazan civilians who enter Israel, who film burning corpses in the streets of Israel and who shout Allahu Akbar, look what we're doing to these dogs and to these pigs. So there was great euphoria among the Palestinian population. According to the surveys from Palestinian organizations themselves, the majority, 70% of Palestinians approved of these terrorist attacks, despite the fact that much of the footage was quite openly out there. So there was nothing secret going on. It's not like on the surface it was a very peaceful action and at the bottom it was violent. It was altogether violent, and they were happy about it.
But why were they happy?
They were happy about it because it comes down to certain things. For example, what was the name of that operation? What did Hamas name it?
Abul al-Aqsa, the flood to Al-Aqsa.
Yes, the flood Al-Aqsa. So it was named Al-Aqsa. It wasn't named a liberation of the Palestinians or liberation of Gazans or expanding the borders. It was a religious war on that day. The war was started. We also now have documents of Yahya Sinwar directly instructing his people, instructing Hamas and others. He was clearly saying that this is a religious effort, a religious war to once and for all eliminate the Jewish forces, the Jewish occupation, and to take the Al-Aqsa Mount and to establish the entire land. part of it also goes back to another evidence is in 2018. I like mentioning this because I feel like this is not mentioned enough. It's very blatant, very obvious. Fathi Hamad, a popular spokesperson of Hamas who usually speaks to the Arabic-speaking audience in Gaza, gave a speech during the so-called peaceful March of Return. And he said, in 4 years, brothers and sisters, we will have fulfilled 2 goals. The first is the cleansing of the filth of the Jews, those are his words, from the land of Palestine. The second is the re-establishment of the Islamic Caliphate in Jerusalem. Those are his words. So what you can see here is that Islam is the main driving force when Hamas attacks and when Palestinian Islamic Jihad attacks and when the others attack. Islam is the main driving force, and the main driving force is what Hamas says in their charter in Article 7. It says that they will never give up and they will fight as long as they can to achieve the promise made by Allah that, as the Prophet Muhammad said, they will fight the Jews and kill them, and even rocks and trees will say there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. So the eradication of the Jews is among their goals. The establishment of Islam in the land is among their goals. Together with that, you question yourself sometimes, and you think, how in the world can people become so inhumane and commit such atrocities? We have clips, we have videos of them directly seeing an elderly person in his own home and then without hesitation simply shooting and killing him and confirming that he's dead. We have remnants of them raping women and setting their bodies on fire afterwards and such. So they do this because they dehumanize Israelis and they dehumanize Jews. And I grew up in a household where anti-Semitism was very big. I grew up in a religious environment where anti-Semitism is very big. I heard it. And I come from a Turkish background, from a quite non-violent background. But even for us, the dehumanization of Jews was so big that it was quite common for us to learn that Jews are descendants of apes and pigs. It was normal for us to learn that they are monsters, that they are naturally evil, that we will eventually defeat them, and their suffering is good for us. When something bad happened to Jews, we were taught to, we were basically made to celebrate it. So there was no sympathy, no empathy, no concern at all for the lives and feelings of Jewish people. And so if I learned that kind of stuff, I have interacted with people from here. You can imagine that what Gazans, what the so-called Palestinians learn in terms of dehumanization of Jews is even significantly worse. When you are taught from the very beginning as a young child that your opponents are animals, are less than animals, that they are not humans, that they are filth, that they are evil, and that it is your duty to eradicate them, you simply don't feel much for them anymore. So you will learn violence and you will commit that violence against them. And that is what happened.
So just as a side note, if you would, and as a child or a young person, see me, a Jew, walking into your neighborhood or to your house, or what would you think of a Jew wearing a kippah or whatever? What would, just in general, how did you think of Jews?
So my thoughts evolved over time. I never really internalized the whole hatred that I learned, but just from what you are taught without thinking about it, I think as a much smaller little child, I would have probably thought, oh, a Jew. Well, it's a Jew.
Doesn't he have horns?
Oh my God, it's a Jew. Look at that, it's a Jew. I have to tell my parents there's a Jew over there. Basically, that would be the attitude, because I was in first grade. I was in first grade in Germany as a child of Turkish immigrants, where I learned on the weekend that it is our duty in the future, when the time comes, as prophesied, to fight the Jews and to kill them. I was in first grade. I had no idea what a Jew is. I had no idea what any of this means, but that's what I was taught in a religious environment. And I know that Muslims around the world are taught the same thing. And I don't want to demonize, to reverse things and demonize Muslims now. But the thing is, we have to face the reality that this is something that they learn, and we have to somehow admit this dark truth and do something about it.
Ridvan, what about one of the things that I heard from a lot of people who study the Arab and Muslim world is that there's a sort of culture which comes also from Islam, but also maybe from cultural issues here and in the Middle East, where the way they look at life and death is very different from the way that we, like in the West, we cherish life pretty much. It's generality, but it's pretty much true. We'll have rescue, even though there's discussions about abortion because we're important for life. It's so important for us. Whether you agree or not, it's irrelevant. But here, it's almost like life is meant to promote the greater good of promoting, for example, Islam or destroying the Jewish state or killing the kuffar or whatever it is. The life is irrelevant to the larger cause.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that makes it almost like easier to kill.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at a battle that isn't between you right now fighting in the battlefield between this guy, but something that's of a much larger narrative. You are the representative of Islam, and he is the representative of all the non-believers, the apostates, who need to die.
Yeah.
And you're beating him, you're killing him, not for him and you, for something larger than you.
Yes.
Can you explain that narrative?
Yes. So let's compare three religions and religious cultures here. So the Jewish, the Christian, and the Muslim. I would say, in terms of valuing life, the one that values life the most is probably the Jewish one. So in Judaism and in Jewish culture, it's very common. It's very popular. Even when you drink, you say, you talk about life. You like to have symbols. L'chaim. Yeah, you have symbols that are high, that are about life. Life is a very important thing in Judaism and in Jewish mysticism and all that. So you cherish life. It's a beautiful thing. In Christianity, life is also very much cherished. I would say not to an extent that is as much as in Judaism, but still it is very much cherished, and it is very much valued that you preserve a human life and that you protect a human life and cherish a human life. There is more emphasis on the afterlife based on what you do in life, but still life is very much cherished. In Islam, things are a little bit different. In Islam, so the Quran is quite clear on the fact that everything that you do in this world is very much fleeting. Is like a bunch of leaves that blow in the wind and go away forever. That all the good things that the disbelievers do are completely meaningless for the afterlife.
Does that, by the way, like one of the things that I remember seeing Ridvan Aydemir, he's a singer. I don't know if he was helping children from Gaza who had cancer and were coming to Israel, and he was singing to them and all this, and he was giving them records and stuff. And one of the things that was a famous thing that one of the soldiers went into this house in Gaza with rockets and stuff in the house, and next to where his CD was, where he was giving this kid that was treated, his life was saved by Israel, or at least I'm not exactly sure, but was tried to being saved. And next to there is like Mein Kampf or something like kill all the Jews. And the soldier took the picture and sent it to the singer. Mm-hmm. And he was saying how could this be? And when you say it makes sense, because if that is the outlook, it doesn't matter what they do for you.
Precisely.
It doesn't matter that a lot of the people that went, killed and robbed and burnt the kibbutzim were people who worked in the kibbutzim. That their livelihood came from these people that they were killing for sometimes decades, some of these people. But it doesn't matter, because in the ideology that they're taught from day one, what happens here is irrelevant if you're not a believer.
I went to the kibbutzim last year, and I talked to people there. I know people by now who live there, who lived there, who are very well connected to those circles. Also, the people who were at the Nova Music Festival, for example. Many of these people were they weren't right wing. They weren't hardcore Zionists.
It's an understatement.
They were many of them were very, very liberal, very pro peace, pro Palestine, even pro. They wanted to fight and do whatever they can for the rights and the better treatment of the Gazans. Many of them, I've talked to many of them. They would sacrifice their time. They would volunteer to pick up the sick ones in Gaza and get them the best treatment in Israel. They would give them gifts all the time. Those people were the ones who were brutally murdered first. The Palestinians, the Hamas, and others.
And it makes sense to you as someone who understands Islam?
Yes. It didn't matter to them. It didn't matter to them that these people helped them, because all of it is meaningless. When it comes down to it, sorry to say, but the Quran says, do not befriend the Jews and the Christians. They are friends of one another. And whoever befriends them, he is one of them. That's what the Quran literally says, word for word. It says that the Jews are the worst to you, together with the polytheists in Muhammad's time, for example.
So we're the worst here.
Yeah. It says that Allah created those who disbelieve for hellfire, and that they are the worst of creatures, less than cattle. That's what it says. So, and then Muhammad teaches that, Muhammad says, or the Quran, as mentioned, says that their deeds are completely meaningless. Muhammad says that eventually you have to fight them. He says fighting and killing are the best thing. He says if you knew the value of dying as a martyr and coming back and dying as a martyr again, you would want to do it again and again and again. So this is the greatest pleasure, according to Muhammad, according to the traditions, that he would love to be martyred while killing the infidels again and again and again. So with that whole mindset, it is of course natural that as much as under the surface over there is still a human, and that human might appreciate the good things that you do for that human. It is very likely for that human to also put on the ideological mask on such a day as October 7 and to come and murder you. Yeah. It's very sad and very terrible, but this is the reality. I have very good interactions with some Muslims. I have had very friendly interactions with Muslims, but very often the same Muslims will say that I deserve to be killed because of my situation.
So they're being nice to you on the one hand, but saying like matter of factly, like, we're friendly, but you have to be killed.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily so. There is one layer of it.
They're gently saying it.
There's one layer of it, which is that they might be deceptive, like they smile in your face, but also want you dead. Mm-hmm. That is a thing. But there is also the other layer, which is that they genuinely do feel grateful for what you do. They genuinely do feel some love,
have to die.
But they also believe that you have to die, and the faith is usually stronger than what they personally feel.
Does that basically the whole talk of two-state solution? So when I came to Israel in 2006, we left Gaza. I think I spoke about this before, got beat up by Israeli police for protesting the disengagement from Gaza as a youngster because I was more to the right, and most Israelis at the time supported leaving Gaza out of a certain belief. I guess two things. Number one is that it would be easier to defend Israel if we're not inside Gaza, but also we'll give them the opportunity economically. We will get, they will have more room to, to be successful, to grow. And maybe from there we'll be able to speak and have peace and two-state solution and all. At the time, Israeli polls showed that most Israelis supported a two-state solution. Obviously, not what the Palestinians wanted officially, but there was support in Israel mostly. Obviously, not from people like me, but that's a different issue. And now Israelis don't support the two-state solution at all, pretty much from left to right almost. But I think maybe we shouldn't have supported it at all from the beginning. Yeah. If what you were saying is true, meaning if the Palestinians are almost uniformly Islamic, and if Islam is saying to them, don't ever compromise, really. You can compromise a little bit for the short term and only to bid time so when you could get stronger for them to beat them. But really, they deserve to not be here anymore. And it's your duty to make them not be here anymore.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So let's address it from different perspectives. One thing to point out before I forget it is that there are surveys. I think they are held together by the Palestinian Center for Research and the Washington Institute, held together where the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank are asked if you achieved a two-state solution, would this be enough, or would you want to continue until all the land is yours? The majority of them have said consistently that it wouldn't be enough, even if you gave them a two-state solution. It would not be enough.
The starting point.
They would want to go and take all of the land in the end. Yeah. Hamas made supposedly a second new covenant in 2017. They clearly say in there that while they will never compromise their aim to take all of the land, they can temporarily settle for a two-state solution. What kind of a stupid statement?
Is that the hudna? The whole point of a hudna is to stop, we get stronger, and then we beat you.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that they actually put that there. They actually they actually trust the stupidity of the global community so much that they literally put it down there and say, we will never give up trying to take the entire land, but we are fine with a temporary two-state solution. Nobody in their right mind would accept something like this. But they trust that there are people in the world who will say, oh, look, they're being reasonable right now. So
they took out just to kill all the Jews. That was the main thing of that new. So they said, we have to destroy Israel. We might make some compromises on the way, like to delay it a little bit.
Yeah.
And we want to destroy Israel, but we're taking out the sentence about killing all the Jews. So now we're moderate.
Yeah, and nobody in Hamas actually regards that as a proper document. They still go with the 1988 charter. They still are on that path. This is just for the public. This is just for the West to basically absorb and to take in. But about the two-state solution. So there was a time in Israel in the 2000s when there were talks with Yasser Arafat that broke down. He clearly had no intention to accept a solution because he accepting a solution would have put him in great trouble with the Islamic factions inside the Palestinians. Later on, there was a moment where Israel almost gave away the whole West Bank, Judea and Samaria to the Palestinians.
Olmert wanted to give everything, including parts of Jerusalem.
Yeah,
and Mahmoud Abbas never came back to him.
Olmert wanted to do that, and I'm very glad that it didn't work out.
Yes, me too.
Because the thing is, had that worked out, you probably would be in a much worse situation now. They would have gathered much more strength, and they would be fighting with much more strength right now. So I'm really, really glad that it didn't work out. Unfortunately, so I have studied the history of the region and the conflict from the very beginning, and it's very fascinating to see Theodor Herzl's vision for this region. He was a brave and very bright man. The thing is, he was also very much. He also had this Western mindset very much, and he was a little bit under the illusion of being Western. Yes. So he wrote a whole book about the ideal of a future, the new homeland,
Neuland.
Yeah, and he was, and the thing is, or the old new land, and his vision was basically that, as we come in and as we are productive and nice and good with the Arabs and all that, they will eventually realize that we are just like them and we will all together live in peace and we will share each other's language and values and all that. It's a very, very beautiful story. Unfortunately, it's very far removed from the truth. He didn't really understand how the Arabs are, how the Muslims are. So over time, the Zionist movement and the Zionists, who were often, democratic, socialist, leftists, they did build a beautiful country. They helped a lot. So I don't want to badmouth them. There is a lot of respect that you can give them for what they have established. But they also had a naivety in terms of how to deal with the Arabs and the Muslims. They did think if we just are reasonable with them, if we give them land, we can make peace with them. It was never meant to work out that way. And I am glad that over the last 2 decades, especially over the last decade, Israel has changed directions and approached a new way of handling things, which is simply peace through strength. I still think that Israel is being too reserved in how Israel deals with the terror and with the Temple Mount and with many other things. I still think Israel needs to be much stronger and much more forceful and direct, but this new direction is a better direction. This new direction is the way to deal with the terrorism and with the threats in the land, because that side, the Muslim side, will never settle for simply being nice to each other and then making peace. You have to establish peace through strength. You are in the Middle East. You shouldn't be like the Middle East, but you should learn how to handle the Middle East. And I think Israel is on a good trajectory to do that.
So one last thing about this is about Islam and the way we should understand in order to understand how to deal with them. So talk about the culture of lying. It seems to me that one thing that really no one in the West talks about at all, except for maybe you, and other people like you who understand and come from there, is that this culture is it's inherent in it, of lying to people outside of the culture. Mm-hmm. So let's give an example from from the war in Gaza. The way they present the war in different ways to different people. So to the West, genocide, genocide, genocide. To their own people, look, we're beating the Zionists, we're killing all the Zionists. Look, look, in Arabic, the same person might say one interview in English, then he does an interview in Arabic, he'll say the opposite things. One, he'll say, Gaza's starving, we're all dying, we need to stop this, we need to get more humanitarian aid in, we need to stop the Israelis, international community, war crimes. In Arabic, he'll go and say, we are standing strong. We have all the strength it is. We will not budge. We are not suffering one bit. You are being and you say, how can you be saying the same thing? The same guy, 10 minutes apart, is saying the opposite thing. And the reason is that the truth doesn't matter. It's literally just what you say has nothing in relation to the truth, as long as you are promoting the ideology of, I would say, conquest of Islam in different areas of the world. But as long as that is the general direction of things.
So there is it's very interesting. Christianity puts honesty and truth very, very high. It is unthinkable for a faithful religious Christian person to deliberately speak falsehood. So always speaking the truth, no matter what, is considered
A virtue.
Not even just a virtue. It's considered like the normal thing to do. So now here is the issue: you don't have that in Islam at all. In Islam, there is no regard for truth unless you're dealing with fellow Muslims. When you deal with disbelievers, especially if you are in conflict with them, if you are at war with them, if they are hostile to you in any way, even if you started the hostility, there is no regard for truth at all. War is deception, and you are in a war in one way or another. So you can lie and trick and deceive as much as you want.
By the way, Ridvan, I have to say, you mentioned Arafat. I was just thinking about it. Arafat, during the Oslo Accords, one of the main things, I heard this from someone in the Shin Bet not too long ago who was there at the time. He had to not be in bed with terrorists. He had to not smuggle things to terrorists. So one time he comes to Gaza and it turned out, and the Israeli security was right at the beginning and they were checking his stuff. And it turned out that he was sitting on top of two terrorists under him in the car. And they knew, the Shin Bet knew this, and he said, I'm not bringing anyone in. And they knew he lied. And the Israelis so much wanted peace and so much wanted to believe him that they said, oh, he's doing this for internal reasons. He's saying to the Palestinians, go kill Jews because he has no choice. He has this. And as the terrorist attacks grew and grew, and the evidence grew and grew that Arafat was supporting materially, sometimes, not just telling them to kill, providing them, his organization, the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, Fatah. It took so long for Israel to comprehend this doublespeak. So he would go and meet Rabin or Paris and say, I want peace. I'm with you all the way here. And in the White House, no more wars, no more bloodshed, Rabin said. But then he goes home and in Arabic and says, go kill the Jews, go take Herzliya and Tel Aviv. And so it really is from the start. And Haj Amin al-Husseini all the way from the beginning was talking with the Brits about, helping the Brits. And then he goes to the Germans and is aligned with Hitler. By the way, nobody talks about the fact that the Palestinian movement as a whole pretty much started by being friendly with the Nazis.
Yeah, in fact, Hitler said, so Hitler met with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al-Husseini, and he according to the German records, he promised to him that, so Hitler promised to the Mufti that once the war is won against the Brits and the Soviets, the Germans would have a free way to descend to the Middle East through Turkey. And at that point, the Arabs would be united under the Grand Mufti and would be the primary allies of the Nazis, of Hitler, and would together eliminate the final element of the Jews under the British protection. So these were his words. Yes. So the so-called Palestinian Arab movement was directly in alliance with the Nazis during the Second World War.
He also, by the way, brought soldiers.
It would have brought to light. Had they been successful enough, it would have been brought to light, and we would now read in history that there were these allies of the Arabs and the Nazis and the Italians and the Japanese. it didn't work out, which is why
Thank
this
God.
is a rather obscure part of history that many people don't know about. But there was a strict alliance there.
Yes, and there's pictures of the Mufti
Yeah,
with Hitler
yeah.
meeting with him, and he was and the Mufti, by the way, organized different Muslim divisions that
Yes.
helped the SS. Also, I'm not sure if it killed Jews, but definitely helped the Nazi war machine in general. I'm not that big of a historian, but that's definitely something that was going on above the scenes. The fact that it is not talked about is amazing to me, because you have all these conspiracy theories, but this is not a conspiracy theory. No one talks about it.
This is fact. I want to get back to the truth thing for a second here. So, as we mentioned, so Christianity has this big value of truth, and Islam doesn't. Here's the thing. Right now, on the global scene, especially during this war, you will see that a lot of Western people, a lot of Western, foremost secular leftist people, but also some on the right, some Christians, will jump in and will believe the stories that Hamas and the Muslims will say about Jews and about Israel. Here's the thing. We are dealing with two completely separate worlds, the Christian or post-Christian world and then the Muslim world. Even when it comes to the leftists, the secularists, the progressives, the socialists and all that, in the Western world, as much as they don't like it or realize it, they are under the influence of Christian morality.
Yes.
So they usually tend to speak the truth or take people at their word. So you now have this whole population that values truth more than anything else being lied to by so many Muslims about the conflict. So when the leftists in the West and the Christians in the West hear the Muslims complain and tell all these lies, they don't really question their words, because to them it is completely normal to always speak the truth. So they don't assume that these guys are just a bunch of liars.
Exactly.
So they believe them. So now you're confronted with this huge population that lies to this powerful population, and the powerful population believes them, and now stands together against Israel. Israel values truth more than the Muslims do, but Israel is also very small in number, and Israel is strong, and
they hate the strong all the time.
People don't like the strong over there. People like the weak. So this is a very, very big issue. Another thing is, I just talked to Jonathan Conricus, the former spokesman of the IDF, and I asked him about this whole thing. I said, look, Hamas said very clearly in their speeches, in their internal speeches, that they want to, in a few years, eradicate all of you and take the land. Why didn't you guys pay attention to this? I don't understand. He said to me, it's very simple and very stupid. Because if we, like in the West, don't believe people when they tell us what they want to do. It's basically what you just said. We hear them say all these atrocious things. We hear them say that they want to kill us, but we tell ourselves, oh, we are making peace. We are currently keeping the peace. So when that guy says that, it's just rhetoric. He's just saying that. He's just saying that to appease his people. He's just saying that to motivate people and all that. He probably doesn't mean it. Probably nothing's going to happen. We still watch, and we see the warning signs and the red flags, but we think, okay, it's no big deal. They're probably just,
they're people like us.
Yeah. So even in Israel, he said, we have the problem that, like in the West, we live good lives and we want to protect the peace, so we don't see the dark reality of how things actually are. Now we see it. I hope this is a big eye-opener. I really hope this is a big eye-opener, because I've also here in Israel, walking around, encountered people. I talk to them about Islam. I mean, religious Jews. I talk to them about Islam, and they tell me Islam doesn't seem to be that big of a problem. It might be radicalism, and Islam is just a religion where they just believe in one God, and that's it. It's like, no. I learned from childhood that you are demons, that you are all evil, that you are our enemies, and you come here telling me that Islam is not the problem. So I hope people can abandon this way of looking at the darkness that comes from that culture and thinking, oh no, it's no big deal, everything is all right. I hope people can open their eyes. It's very important.
And we should just say that all the polls in majority Islamic countries show that they don't really like Jews. Let's just put it lightly. It's not like a secret that you have to. It's not just because you were there that this is true. It's that it is objectively true. That these are the opinions, like our neighbor to the south, Egypt. They overwhelmingly hate Jews. Like Egypt is really an interesting case study in a country that has a peace treaty with Israel, but every citizen there thinks that all Israelis should basically die. It's like an amazing thing. But I guess this is an amazing segue for my next topic, which is Islam in the West. And we've seen, especially in Europe, where you grew up in Germany, in the past decade plus, extreme waves of migrants from Islamic countries, Arabs, Africans, well, wherever. And the West, especially in Europe again, because America has two big oceans. So, but it's starting to get there, Dearborn, Michigan, and all these other places. But you have people still in the UK, in Germany, who are like, this is fine. This is great. It's multicultural. People of all different backgrounds. Who are we to judge if someone believes in this and that and that? Who are we? Why are we better? And when people say, for example, we need to preserve our culture, that's racist. How can you put your culture above other cultures? And I think two questions to you. Number one, is it really dangerous to the West that so many people from Islamic countries are coming to the West? Meaning, is it really the second generation? Won't it just assimilate? Like 30 years ago, British, Pakistanis, a lot of them assimilated, let's say. Mm-hmm. That's what they tell us. I don't know. And secondly, why is it so hard to say, yes, Western culture is better, more moral than Islamic culture? And that's why they're coming to us.
So two things. One is that according to most of the research on this topic, and excuse me for not remembering what to cite there, but also from experience, honestly, the second generation is generally more radical and more extreme than the first generation. So the first generation of people who immigrate to the West among Muslims are usually more adaptive and less extreme than their children who follow, who seem to be more in love with the culture and ideology of their origin countries and with Islam. There is a big fascination with that. You have the same thing going on in the UK, for example. I grew up in Germany. I saw it in Germany, but in the UK as well, you will see that the second generation is and the third generation is very active in spreading the religion and in affirming that Islam is the absolute truth and needs to rule over society. Here is the thing. I see this here as well. I was walking around with a Jewish guide the other day, and he was telling me at some point how beautiful it is because here in the old city, we Muslims, Jews, and Christians live together without any problems, and we respect each other, we help each other. And I thought, yeah, that's very, very nice, but that's the problem. So this is an illusion. If you ask the Muslims how they really feel about things, they will probably not be as good about it as you are. Because,
but also, it's not really true. There have been tons of terrorist attacks around the area.
Of course. But so people like to just see the good oh, look, we're helping each other. Look, this guy is very nice to me. We help each other and all that. And I think so we can work things out. People are usually a little bit deluded and fooled by the idea that, look, I know these Muslims. They're very friendly to me. So therefore, Muslims are okay and we can be friends and all that. Yes, I agree. You can be friends. I agree. I can be friends. Despite the fact that I'm very opposed to Islam and I'm a former Muslim, which means I deserve the death penalty according to Islam, I can be friends with Muslims as well. That doesn't take away from the fact that overall Islam is very dangerous. It doesn't take away from the fact that even if I'm friendly, and even if you are friendly and you make peace with most Muslims who will not be brutal enough to come out and kill you, there is an underlying brutality and darkness there. If you have a large Muslim population, it comes together with a population with percentages that are very extreme, and that when push comes to shove, they are very much more assertive, much stronger, much louder than those majorities that are nice to you.
Yeah.
Because with Islam, most people are just humans. They just want to live their lives, even if they are Muslims. So many of them will not spend their time implementing Sharia law. But as long as you have a Muslim population, you will have a part of the population that is devoutly religious. Just like with Jews, most Jews just live their lives, just spend their lives regularly. But you have, this might be a negative thing in Islam and a positive thing in Judaism, or the other way around, whatever it is. But you have a religious population that is much more devout, much more adamant to practice, to fulfill the commandments in Judaism and all that. Similarly, in Islam, you will have a population that is lackluster in terms of practicing Islam, and you will have a smaller population that is very adamant in practicing their religious faith. Unfortunately, traditionally, Islam is a very subversive, a very hostile, a very aggressive, a hateful, a very backward religion. So if you have a population, even if it's just 10%, that is very adamant to practice and to live out and to fulfill the Islamic religion in society, you have a problem. Because you will now have, if you have 1 million Muslims, if 10% of those are people who want to traditionally follow and implement Islam wherever they go, you have a huge number of people that can cause massive problems if they become very active. So as much as you might have good relationships with most Muslims, it doesn't negate the fact that there is an underlying Islamic problem that might choke you and hit you in the face if you don't look at it, if you just ignore it. The other, so with Europe, this is the mistake with Europe as well. Europeans are even more naive than Israelis are in this regard. So I have a lot of respect for Israel, and I think Europeans should learn a bit from Israel. Europeans are even more naive. Europeans have this feeling of, we of course have the events of World War II and the Holocaust, which was an absolutely abhorrent, inhuman thing. And Europe has since adopted this whole guilt culture, not just Germans, but all the others too. I grew up in Germany. When I grew up in Germany as a child, as an adolescent, I heard phrases from Germans, from teachers and from others, such as, especially we Germans have a responsibility to be good to everyone and to help everyone and to make things right. Look, I understand. I agree. Especially you, because of what happened, have the responsibility to learn from your mistakes and to work toward a better future. But that doesn't mean you should be overdoing it and directing that into the completely wrong direction. You did something very, very bad. Your ancestors or your fathers did something really, really bad, committed a massive genocide and implemented racial segregation against a population that was targeted under complete lies. That doesn't mean that just because you did that, and by just because you mean that, I'm trying not to.
Not just because you did that.
Because you did that, that does not mean that you now have to embrace everybody that comes to you and completely let down your guard. I mean, because you made a mistake, that doesn't mean you have to now be stupid forever, right? You can learn from your horrible atrocities and commit to never do something like that again.
But also, you killed the Jews, and you're bringing people that would love to kill more Jews.
Exactly,
it's very
because
weird.
now you are bringing in a population that hates Jews more, and
Yes.
I'm going to say more so than the average Nazi actually did. So this is very funny to point out, but Hitler, I've studied Hitler a lot, especially in my youth. I listened to all of his speeches in German. I read his book several times. I read Goebbels' diaries and all that. The thing about Hitler is, as much as he did, as he committed horrible atrocities against Jews, the public statements that he made about Jews are not remotely as bad as the average thing that Hamas says about Jews. So Hamas's words about Jews are significantly worse than whatever Hitler has said in public about Jews. So to be tolerant toward that population, and Hamas does it not because they're just some weird extremist organization. They do it because of Islam.
Yeah.
To be tolerant against to the Islamic population while trying to fix the problem of the Nazis is just peak stupidity.
And it's also moral decadence, I would
Yes.
say. Because I would also say one more thing about this, the moral relativism that seems to be here. So there's a sort of way in which progressives of today look at the Islamists that is perverse and immoral and almost and definitely racist.
Yeah.
Because what they basically say is, don't listen to what the Islamist is saying. Don't listen to what Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Iranian regime, Hezbollah, the Houthi, don't listen to what they're saying. Don't listen when they say kill the Jews, destroy the West, all this stuff. They're really doing it because of Western colonialism, imperialism, and all this kind of stuff. They're really doing it because we, the capitalist West, plundered them and subjugated them for so many years. That's why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And the only way to remedy this is for us to give them tons of stuff now. And then when you say to these people, but look, they say that has nothing to do with why they're killing all the Jews or why they want to destroy the West. They're doing it because they really believe that this is what they should be doing. And they'll say, pretty much, no, don't believe them. We know. They're not smart enough. They don't know how to explain themselves.
Yeah.
You see Mamdani in New York, it's pretty much what he says. His father is he teaches, colonialist studies or something. That's the whole premise of the study. That the at this point, it shouldn't be that way, but it is. We are smarter than the natives in the Arabic or African world, and we know better than them why they do what they do.
Yeah.
Isn't it like it's mind blowing if you think about it?
And it's such a lie too. The Western people have learned this narrative because of colonialism. That, for example, there were many instances where the Europeans, who were significantly more, and the Europeans were the most advanced at the time.
Yeah.
When they went over to go to the Native Americans and basically, at first establish peaceful relations, but then quickly it got derailed and they ended up, killing a lot of people, and many of them also died because of diseases. And it was very convenient for the Europeans that they died. So. The same thing was done with Africans, with other populations in Southeast Asia, and so on. There is some guilt associated with that. We went to less fortunate populations and treated them unfairly and sometimes brutally. Yes, sure, but the same thing did not happen with the Muslims.
Yeah.
The Muslims were mostly a united force until nearly 100 years ago, until 120 years ago, when much of the Muslim world was united under a caliphate. And if they weren't under that caliphate, they were under other sultanates or rival caliphates and things like that. So they were usually a massive, brutal imperialist force that had it at its core to conquer everything, to conquer and to spread the banner of Islam. It was the explicit narrative of the Ottoman Empire, for example. I mean, I learned the history of the Ottoman Empire. I studied in Turkey as well. That they referred to their empire as the sultanate of the world. Because the idea was to establish the banner over all of the world. Ideally, they would rule the entire world and subjugate everybody. So when the Europeans defeated the caliphates and the Muslim lands, they simply defeated imperialism and then took control over the empire and divided it and brought democracy to these nations that didn't have a sense of democracy. So you could say that when they defeated these populations, maybe they treated them a little bit unfairly because they imposed their own system, but let's not lie about this. Yes. They defeated an empire. It wasn't innocent people who were just living their lives, just being friendly, and then who were suddenly unknowingly invaded by this very, very mean Western force.
Yes.
They were an empire that was crushed and defeated. So as a result of that, Muslim populations have been under the influence of Western influence, and they didn't really work with it very well because democracy was very much in line with Western Christian culture, but it doesn't really work well with Islamic culture. But the Muslim populations, let's speak facts. Over the last 100 years, over the last 50 years especially, the majority of Muslim countries were never at any point directly invaded or attacked or bombed or anything like that. Many of these populations, Pakistanis, for example, Pakistan is a big deal in the UK. Pakistanis will often be represented as these people who were, victimized, who were, mistreated and all that. They got their own country because of Britain. They got their own Islamic country because of Britain literally gave them their own identity and then gave them the freedom to come over here and to live here and all that. So this whole idea that these are all poor people, poor nations that are just miserable because we made them miserable is complete nonsense. if my family, if I went and started fighting and committed a terrorist attack, there would be lots of people who would think that that I did this just because of imperialism. I never experienced a single bit of imperialism or injustice in my entire life. So I would do it because of my own agency.
Exactly.
And the Western people would deny that. They will say, "Oh no, he can't think for himself. He's too low. He's too stupid. He's too uncivilized. We are civilized, and we mistreated. We made him do that." This is just such a ridiculous way of looking at things. We are basically saying that Muslims are too stupid to think for themselves, which is why they don't know what they do. Which is why we shouldn't judge them. This is ridiculous.
Yes, in a way, people, when we, in our conversation, we respected the people in this region more than the Western leftist does, because we actually discuss the ideas that the Islamist puts forth. We respect that he means what he says and he does what he means.
Yeah.
But they seem to not be able to handle that.
Exactly.
I guess one small question is, and then I'll get to just answer this shortly, is, and you asked me before, like, what, when I say Islam, you said, how should I, like, should I say radical Islam? Basically, you were worried that I would be offended, I guess, in Israel, because we're trying to make peace with people. and I guess it is a good question just in general. How do you think we should look at and you sort of spoke about it sort of in a roundabout way before, but we have 2 million people who are Muslims in Israel out of 10 million. It's a lot of people. They have about 10 members of Knesset. In the polls, they can get more depending on voter turnout. How much in the world, let's say, not in Israel, because I'm not sure of the polls here, but should we differentiate between radical Islam and Islam, or
No.
Islamists and
No.
Islam,
No.
or is there no difference at all?
No, you shouldn't differentiate at all. If you ask Muslims themselves, they will say there is no difference. If you ask Erdogan, who is a horrible leader, the president of Turkey, he will say there is no such
He's
thing
Muslim Brotherhood, no?
Yeah, but he will say there is no moderate Muslim. All Muslims are the same. If you ask the Muslim propagandists, they will say all Muslims are the same. I will tell you that there is no such thing as radical Islam. There is no such thing as extremist Islam. The only thing where you could say that these people are much more extreme than the traditionalists would be, for example, take a group like ISIS, for example. With ISIS, I would say that their ideology goes a little bit further than the average traditionalist Muslim ideology, because they actually believe that they take their ideas of how to practice Islam, and they say, if any Muslim opposes us, we see that Muslim as a non-believer, and we reserve our right to enslave and to kill them. I would say that would go a little bit too far for the average traditional Muslim idea. Hamas, I would say, is not a radical Muslim organization. It's not an extremist organization. It is a regular Muslim organization. It is a regular Muslim group. I would say most Islamic organizations that are in line with Hamas, and when you ask the global Muslim population, they will usually sympathize with Hamas. They are simply regular Muslims who take action, who care about their traditional Muslim beliefs and who take action. This is not radicalism. And I know, especially when I was here last year, I noticed that Islam is a very sensitive topic and people don't want to speak ill of Islam. I was personally told, because I made a post while I was here, that I should not make any posts that disparage Islam. Because I should be sensitive toward people's sentiments and feelings. And I see that Israel is doing something nice in trying to keep the peace and make peace. However, as said, you're putting a Band-Aid on a big problem. Islam is a huge problem. Yes, you have a large Muslim population, and yes, you don't want to rock the boat and make, have war with them, but you should also be honest about the fact that Islam is the problem, and you should talk to them about it and fix it.
But how about, maybe I'll give another proposition. Tell me what you think. So I heard by a few other ex-Muslims, another way of looking at it is that most of the Muslims aren't really, I would say, fully religious, meaning they'll compartmentalize parts of their religion. So they'll say, it does say that we should do this and this and this, but for me personally, that is too extreme. And I'm not going to say it out loud maybe, or I'm not going to to say straight up, I'm not doing this, but I will say I'm not a radical, meaning really that I'm not going to listen to this part of the religion. Can that be, is that something that you think is a possibility?
Partly I agree, but that is just because, as I said earlier, most Muslims are also human beings. Most human beings want to be happy in life and live their life. If they are Muslims, they are influenced by Islam, which is a pretty dark ideology, which does not cherish life. But most Muslims also just want to live their lives. So for some, it is of course convenient or sinful to disregard Islamic values and Islamic rules and to live their lives. But that doesn't that wouldn't mean that they are different kinds of Muslims,
Right.
or not radical Muslims. I would say I don't want to use the word radical Islam or radical Muslim, because I would say that that peaceful person is a Muslim, and the radical terrorist from Hamas is also a Muslim. They both simply have different focuses in life. One wants to live his life more and focus on life and on happiness more. The other wants to focus more on his religion, and the religion is the problem here.
So there's no, if I take what you say to the, not to the extreme, it's a logical conclusion. There's about 2 billion Muslims in the world, I think, at this point. They are demographically, I think, they're really growing.
Yeah.
They have a lot of children in although in Iran, no one's having children, which is an interesting phenomena. Maybe because Iranians aren't really religious,
Yeah.
but that's an interesting side note.
I think I think only 30% or so identify at this point as people who really believe in the tenets of Islam,
which is a pot waiting to boil over with what's happening there. But and the fact that they don't have water in their taps. But let's put that aside for 1 minute. In general, very growing religion. The West doesn't have children anymore, pretty much. I think Israel is the only country in the West that's having above replacement rate children, which is amazing, in a bad way. And in Africa, Islam is growing very much. How do we, and I'm putting aside the communists from China and all this, because they're aligned in a way, but one will eat the other at some point. But the West, do we have any chance at this point? It seems to me that if the trajectory is the way it is, the Muslim population in the world is growing, and in the West it's growing, and the West itself is shrinking and becoming less and less independent in its thought, in its Western philosophy, and the way it looks at things. Do you think we're like done?
I think it is good to pray. It's good to pray to God, Hashem, to help us out in this situation. It is a very difficult situation, but I haven't given up hope at all. I think that there is, so things are changing. Technology is changing. There are certain things that I'm not qualified enough to talk about in terms of employment and work and population growth that are changing with technology a little bit, with the advancement of it. That said, as it looks right now, the Muslim populations are growing very rapidly, while the Western Christian population is in
steep decline. No.
Yeah, so in numbers they're still growing, but in terms of percentage, it's in a free fall right now. So compared to the Muslim population, because they have a lot of kids, so they grow very much faster and take over in terms of percentage.
And that brings political influence also, and everything we've seen in the West since even October 7th is it's like a point in time where you can see what you are talking about in the West.
Yeah.
You can literally see in the UK members of parliament being voted in just on Gaza. Not on cleaning the streets, not on getting better education, not on getting businesses into their areas where they represent, but just on beating the Jews in Gaza.
Yes.
And that is the crux of the matter. They don't care about their lives in the West. They want to beat the Jews and destroy the West. That's it.
But it looks like right now that if things really go dramatically the way they do, Israel will gradually lose the allies that Israel has in the West. So this is also what's funny to me. There are some conspiracy theorists who think that that Israel is pushing Muslim growth in the West. Why would Israel be doing this? Like it would be the strategically dumbest thing to do for Israel. So Israel would be losing their allies in the West and would be standing alone in the world against a growing, massive, radical population, which is why it's probably important to make peace with certain populations that surround Israel. But so it seems pretty dark. I would say that things can turn around. I'm trying my best. Many of us are trying our best to wake up people in the West, to change the way things are going. We try to speak to Muslims and to try to tell more and more Muslims about the falsehood of Islam. And I think that there is also a massive growth of apostasy, of people leaving Muslims in Muslim nations, or leaving Islam in Muslim nations. And I want to help that growth. If we had a future where these Muslim populations rapidly leave Islam behind and go toward a different belief system or a different way of looking at things, that would bring peace. That could bring peace, because I think Islam is the problem. Islam is also the core issue at the foundation of this conflict that we are in. So there are those aspects: waking up the West, telling Muslims about the falsehood of Islam and leading them away from it, and through all of it, praying to God and having peace through strength, as Israel does. I hope Israel never, ever makes the mistakes of the past and compromises their strength.
Lastly, Ridvan, I want to ask you about, this is just the last thing because I can't not ask you about this. You've commented on this on X. I come from America. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in a Hasidic family. You don't see that now, but I had the entire uniform. And growing up, I listened to a lot of talk radio, conservative talk radio. The right in America always supported Israel, at least since I'm a child. And even since the Reagan years and Nixon even, the right was pretty pro-Israel. There was always elements like Pat Buchanan and all these people. But by and large, conservatives supported Israel, to varying degrees. And now we've seen a rise of, some people would call it the woke right, others would call it the horseshoe theory right that meets the crazy lefties in the middle. But and I just want to ask you one last question. Tucker Carlson just had on Nick Fuentes on his show, and I'm not even going to get into all of the to whether he should have him on or not. I just want to ask one question. He said that the people he hates the most, so I assume this means more than the Islamic radicals or whatever you want to call them. We're not going to get into whether they're radicals or not, but more than the people who are subverting the West, more than the people who do the terror, more than the people who are the leftists that he for years claims he was fighting. He hates the Christian Zionists, and he mentioned Huckabee and Ted Cruz and a few others.
He left one person out, though. He left out Charlie Kirk.
Exactly.
For some reason.
Who you actually met, and actually a great interview that he did with you on stage. I saw a few days ago, getting ready to talk to you. But can you just speak about, finally, why, for you, Christian Zionism is the right way to go? What does it mean to be a Christian Zionist, and why he's wrong?
So I'm actually personally not a Christian Zionist, because Christian Zionism is a certain ideology that emerged over the last 2 centuries that I would also say, so this is going to be very complicated, and we could talk for an hour about this whole issue.
So keep it short.
But I'll keep it short. So, Christianity had a very troubled history, or Christians and Jews had a very troubled history in the past. Right now, we are actually at the best point in terms of Christian-Jewish relations. And I would say this was not without blame on both sides. The Christian history began with persecution from the Jewish authorities. And then as soon as Christians gathered a little bit of strength, they started persecuting the Jews in return. And then the Romans were using the two sides against each other, basically. And the two sides would be careful not to associate with each other, and would sometimes, to put it crudely, rat out each other. So there is a long fight between these two sides going on that started from the beginning. But Christianity is fundamentally not against Jews or anti-Semitic. It is largely a part of history that is simply a fight. At its core, I came to Christianity only this year, but I had a lot of love for Jews and Israel before I became a Christian, and it was when I read the New Testament, the Epistle to the Romans by the Apostle Paul, who himself was a Jew,
Yes.
and who himself was a Pharisee actually, who says in his epistle to the Romans that he has nothing but love, that he has so much love for the Jews, for his fellow Jews, that he wishes he could give up his own salvation to bring all of them to Christ. So that's what he says, and he also concludes it with in chapter 11 of Romans. He says that that while they are enemies to you due to the gospel, they are beloved by God for the sake of their ancestors, and God made a promise to them, and He will never give it up, because God does not make empty promises, or He does not take back his promises. So eventually all will be reconciled and all Israel will be saved. So you don't have to agree with this as a Jew, but this is the Christian position found directly in the New Testament. This is what I learned before I converted to Christianity. So there is profound love for Jews, especially more so than any other non-Christian populations. This is directly in Christianity. Over the last few decades, or over the last 2 centuries, there has been a growth in Protestant circles of
Evangelicals, especially.
a renewed love for Jews, and especially with this context of the Apostle Paul and what he says about Jews, of having Jews back as a plan.
Yeah.
Within Christianity to establish and help the Jews in their homeland and all that. So Christian Zionism is part of that. There's also some theology that some people will call dispensationalism that is much more complex. I shouldn't even mention it because it's too complex to get into.
But I guess the question is maybe not about Christian, but why is it wrong what he's doing? I guess, why is it wrong to say that these are the people he hates the most? Why does he hate them the most?
I'll get there. Let me get there very quickly. So I would say that the Christian Zionist movement is a little bit to blame as well, because much of the love for Israel and the Jews came from that movement, but the movement has also just kind of established this as the right thing, as the norm. Much of the younger population, the current population, doesn't really know why.
Yeah.
They don't really know why. It's just, okay, we love Jews, we are with Israel, but much of the population doesn't really know why. So there is now a revival of Christianity, of Christian belief in the West going on, very much so with traditional Christianity, with Orthodox Christianity, with Catholic Christianity, and with traditional Protestant forms of Christianity. Many of these people have no idea why this whole love for Jews and love for Israel is a thing, because the Christian Zionist population never really bothered to explain things. So within all of this confusion, you now have people like Tucker Carlson take advantage of these trends and spread anti-Semitism. And because it is a trend, because probably his handlers love this, because he serves interests like the Islamists who want to cause Islamic supremacy and division in the West, he goes the way of feeding the anti-Semites, feeding the anti-Zionists. It is simply a trend right now. It will probably fall out of fashion at some point, but it is simply a trend right now. And it is not a Christian thing. Anti-Semitism is not acceptable in Christianity. Hating a population is not acceptable in Christianity. Even the Catholics, the Catholic Church, despite all the problems with Israel, the Catholic Church was the first to, on a global scale, directly say that anti-Semitism is rejected and is evil. It is directly in their doctrines nowadays. So this is a trend, and a very sad trend, pushed by opportunists who want to be the new media. I don't think it's going to last very long.
Yeah, and I would just say Christian Zionist, I would call him a Christian Islamist, if that's the thing, because he says he's a Christian, and he's literally promoting all of the interests. I don't have any conspiracy theories. I don't need to have any conspiracy theories. I can just see what he's promoting. Mm-hmm. You can see his last 2 years on his show, the people he puts on and what they're saying. You have apologists for the Nazis. You have people who are blaming Israel for everything. You have things that were debunked a minute after they were on his show, like the guy from the GHF who said that he saw the boy being killed in front of his eyes, and they found the boy. He never issued a retraction. The boy is well fed, it seems, and very good, in good health. You had lots of things like
Tucker
that.
doesn't care about the truth. He doesn't care about facts. He's
just asking questions.
Yeah,
that's his thing. I'm just asking questions. It's pretty remarkable that he is someone who has so much influence on people around people in the administration that I would worry that I think that people who are sane and normal and support President Trump, as most people in Israel do, by the way, should tell the people in the administration to be wary of this type, because he definitely does not have the MAGA movement's best interests at heart, because all he's doing is fracturing the MAGA. So if you like MAGA and if you like President Trump, you would, even just on a practical level, on a utilitarian level, just tell him, shut up. You're destroying MAGA, and we're having an election in a year. Let us be united. But instead, they keep on bringing these conspiracy theories up. There's an almost push to just make Jews uncomfortable around these people. And you want Jews to vote Republican. You don't want them to go to the crazies on the other side. So why would you do that? Anyway, that's just me. I want to say, truly honored to speak with you.
Same.
It's cool that you're in Israel. I follow you a lot. Watch your videos, see what you have to say. I always find it interesting. I saw your tweets. I truly tell my audience, whoever's watching, follow him, subscribe, everything. He deserves it. He's brave. You don't have to agree with everything. I'm not sure I agree, because I don't have all of the info. Like, I don't have my opinions formulated on everything, but that's okay. The fact that we're able to have this conversation is pretty amazing. Other places would throw you out. So, you know.
Yeah. No, I'm really happy to be here, and it's been a great pleasure. First off, to be in Israel, but also to be on this show. I'm really so thankful for everything I have seen and I've experienced. I love being here. I will probably be back as soon as possible.
Come for Shabbat dinner when you come back next time.
I will.
We invite you. We have 3 crazy kids, so whatever, you'll be okay. But guys, thank you guys for being so much. Thank you so much for being with us. Ridvan Aydemir, truly pleasure. Apostate
Prophet.
Apostate Prophet. I'm very tired. Apostate Prophet. Subscribe, like his stuff, follow him, spread it out, and we'll see you on our next episode. Thank you so much.